This is going to be a brief history of what occurred before the first season of Game of Thrones, but is relevant to the characters Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow, aka Aegon Targaryen. I'm going to leave out extraneous details, so if I say so-and-so had 3 kids, but they actually had 4, but one died of grayscale at 6 months, there's no need to correct me. This video is for those who haven't yet started the show, or those who have watched the show but feel their history knowledge is a little shaky and it's making the show maybe less enjoyable compared to what it could be. It's nothing to be ashamed of if you're confused by just watching the show, because the names are very unusual and there's a large number of white men with brown hair who look very similar. So our story begins when a family, the Targaryens, traveled from one continent, Essos, to another, Westeros, and conquered Westeros with the help of their dragons. Most of the details surrounding the conquer and their reign, which lasted hundreds of years, are not relevant. What is relevant is that over the generations, the Targaryens decided that they didn't want to share power by marrying a family member to a different family, thus elevating the status of the other family, so they decided to marry Targaryens to other Targaryens. As we know, interbreeding over generations has a negative effect on genetics, and in the case of the Targaryens, this mostly resulted in mental illness, or what they call in the Game of Thrones universe, madness. Obviously, mental illness doesn't usually cause one to be evil, but when a person is spoiled their whole life and given absolute power combined with the possible symptoms of mental illness like delusions of grandeur, paranoia, and sadism, the results can be unfortunate. In this case of King Aerys II, aka the Mad King, there were unfortunate results. It is said that he became more and more evil over his life. Like many Targaryens, he thought he was like the King of Fire and became obsessed with something called wildfire, which will unfortunately come back to haunt us not only in the history before Game of Thrones, but also during the show itself. You may be wondering how a dude this crazy could effectively run a country. Well, he had someone to do that for him. In Westeros, the ruler usually has a hand of the king or queen, who does a lot of the actual ruling, so the monarch can spend their time as he or she pleases, kind of like the prime minister in many countries today. The Mad King's hand of the king was a man named Tywin Lannister. He was very good at running the country, so no one really noticed or put up a big ruckus about the king being nuts. The king was married to his sister and had 3 children, the oldest, a son, Rhaegar Targaryen, the middle child, a son, Viserys Targaryen, and the youngest, that is actually not yet born at this time, Daenerys Targaryen. The oldest son, Rhaegar, was known to be a good, wise person who was a talented fighter. Everyone who knew the king was crazy was hoping he'd die soon so his son could rule. This oldest son, Rhaegar, was married to Elia Martell, whose family is from Dorne, which is part of the country, but it's just the southernmost part. This was a slap in the face to the man who ran the kingdom for the king, Tywin Lannister, who expected the king to marry his oldest son to his daughter, Cersei Lannister. Rhaegar and Elia had 2 children. It is not known if they were in love or not, although their marriage was political, although it is believed that they are both good people. And at this point, too, there were no more dragons in the Targaryen family. Just over the years, they had just not treated the dragons well, and they just slowly kind of died off. Okay, so this is kind of the state of the country until everything changed at a jousting tournament. So Rhaegar, the king's oldest son, won the tournament. It was tradition for the winner to give his wreath to the woman he loved. Instead of giving it to his wife Elia, the prince gave his wreath to a young lady named Lyanna Stark in front of many important people who were all shocked. Not only was Rhaegar married, but Lyanna Stark, who he gave his wreath to, was also engaged to a man named Robert Baratheon. This caused mucho drama. At the same tournament, the king named Tywin Lannister's oldest son, young Jaime Lannister, to be one of his Kingsguard, which are like the Secret Service, except you can never get married and have kids. This was strike 2 for the king against Tywin Lannister, and Tywin resigned from his job running the country. Sometime later, Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark disappeared together. The rumor was that Rhaegar had kidnapped Lyanna. This pissed off both her family, the Starks, and the man she was engaged to, Robert Baratheon. Lyanna Stark's oldest brother, Brandon Stark, went down to the capital to demand that the king make his son Rhaegar return his sister Lyanna. The king imprisoned him. Then, Lyanna Stark's father went down to the capital to demand that his son Brandon be released and his daughter Lyanna be returned to their family. The Mad King hung the father, Rickard, above Wildfire and tied the son Brandon up by the neck a short distance away. The son died by strangulation from fighting with all of his might to get close enough to save his father from the fire, and then his father roasted to death because he obviously couldn't save him. We now have a big problem on our hands because the royal family has just pissed off most of the country by unfairly treating important citizens. Lyanna Stark's fiancé, Robert Baratheon, and her family, now led by her remaining oldest brother, Eddard, aka Ned Stark, began a rebellion. They worked their way down the country, and Tywin Lannister, who had been spurned by the king twice, was chilling, watching everything go down, just not getting involved in any way. Obviously, he has a grudge towards the king, but he doesn't want to jump in with the rebels because he is a smart dude. And also at this point, Prince Rhaegar is still missing in action with Lyanna Stark, so nobody knows where they are. Eventually, when the rebels started to get near the capital, Rhaegar emerged out of nowhere and took the army to fight the rebels. Lyanna's fiancé, Robert Baratheon, killed the man who supposedly stole his fiancé, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, in battle. The rebels won the battle and turned their eyes toward the capital. Seeing his chance for revenge and also ending up on the winning side, Tywin Lannister, who once ran the country for the king, pretended to arrive at the capital to defend the city against the rebels, but instead sacked it. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister's son, Jaime Lannister, was by the king's side as his Kingsguard, aka Secret Service. The king told Jaime to go cut his dad's head off for betraying the king, and also planned to blow the city up. Remember, the king was obsessed with fire, particularly wildfire, and had placed it all under the city. So wildfire is kind of like a liquid that's flammable, and it burns really intensely. So if they lit it on fire, it's kind of like explosives. So Jaime Lannister, who had to watch the king torture and murder multiple people, including the Starks, was ordered to chop off his own dad's head and knew that millions of people would be killed in the capital city if the king exploded the city. So he stabbed the king in the back with his sword. So from there on, Jaime Lannister would be known as the Kingslayer. You would think everyone would praise Jaime Lannister for killing this evil king, but people actually judged him for killing the man he had sworn to protect. In Game of Thrones, they take oaths very seriously. Anyway, Tywin Lannister's army sacks the capital and enters the castle, and obviously they find the king dead. His men also come across dead Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's wife and children. Tywin Lannister's super evil bannerman, Gregor Clegane, famously raped her, murdered her, and killed her children. So you'll know that quote if you've seen the show. But basically this man rapes Prince Rhaegar's wife, murders her, and murders her 2 children. So basically the king's oldest son, Rhaegar, his wife and children are now dead. So like who's king? So he has 2 more children, but where are they? His wife/sister had snuck out of the capital to a place called Dragonstone, where she died giving birth to their daughter and 3rd child, Daenerys Targaryen. So Daenerys and Viserys, who were the king's 2 remaining children, are down in Dragonstone. So whoever would become the king would obviously kill these children to prevent them from trying to take the throne in the future. So they were snuck away to the continent their family had originally come from, Essos, to be hidden. So remember back in the day when I was telling you their family came over and took over Westeros? Well, they went back to where they came from. So Lyanna Stark's fiancé, Robert Baratheon, who killed Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, is named king. But where the heck is Lyanna? Lyanna's oldest brother, Eddard, aka Ned Stark, tracks her down to a tower in the southernmost part of the continent of Westeros, Dorne. He finds his sister Lyanna dying after, dun dun dun, giving birth. Lyanna tells her brother Ned that she wasn't kidnapped by Rhaegar Targaryen, that she was in love with him and ran away with him. They had Rhaegar Targaryen's marriage to his wife, Elia Martell, annulled and got married themselves, and she had just given birth to their son, Aegon Targaryen, also known as Jon Snow. Lyanna's dying wish was that her brother Ned Stark would protect her baby son. She knew that the king would kill anyone who was related to the Targaryens or could take the throne, especially her son, who was literally heir to the throne. So at this point, this baby is heir to the throne over his uncle Viserys and aunt Daenerys, because he's the son of the oldest son of the king. I hope that's clear. So, knowing the only way he can truly keep his nephew safe is by changing his identity, Ned Stark claims that he got a woman pregnant during the war and that this is the result of that. This baby is the result. No one had any idea that this baby was actually the rightful king of their country. So that's the main twist and the crux of the story of the show Game of Thrones. Rhaegar and Lyanna, I hope is worth it. Literally thousands of people died so y'all could be together. I kind of am judging y'all. Sorry. Anyway, so that's it. I hope this cleared some stuff up for y'all.